Welcome in everyone to another Baldur's Gate 3 build video. I am Senpai Zaya. Thank you so much for being here today. So for today's build video, I am taking on the challenge of building a thematic / role-playing Dark Urge build. Now, when it comes to building a Dark Urge for roleplay purposes, there is a lot of different options that you can go. You can go Warlock, Barbarian. There's a lot of different ways that you could play this. However, looking at everything, plus on top of that, I also did want to build this focus on critical strikes and use a race that I haven't used. So combining all of that together, I'm going to bring you the Dark Urge build today that is going to be a Barbarian fighter multi-class. So let's jump right into the level guide and see exactly what makes this build tick. Alright, so hopping into character creation, the origin, of course, is going to be the Dark Urge. Kind of makes sense, right? And then moving on to race, I am going to go with half orc for this build. There's a couple different reasons why I'm going with half orc. The primary reason is because I want to focus on making a critical strike class, and thematic to fit that, like I said before, is the fact that the Dark Urge is such a proficient killer that they have mastered the ability to hit their enemies with extreme precision and hit them right where it hurts. So that's why I wanted to do that. But on top of that, I haven't got to play half orc yet, and I'm sure that there are a lot of different ways that you could take this build, and the race is still up to you if you want to do something else. But because we're focusing on critical strikes, I do think the half orc is the best, and the reason why is because we get savage attacks. Now, when you land a critical hit with a melee attack weapon, you are going to deal an extra dice of weapon damage, which is huge for a critical strike build, because this means that we're going to be able to output an insane amount of damage with this build. Now, the class, your starting class, is going to be Barbarian, of course, one, because it fits the theme and thematic like I talked about earlier, with the Dark Urge of you just being like a normal barbarian and then a normal person and not really knowing what's going on and not really remembering. But then this Dark Urge comes into you and you go into this rage or this frenzy, because we are going to go Berserker. So I really like that thematic for my Dark Urge role-playing build, and giving into that Dark Urge and just raging and going absolutely crazy and murdering everything around you. I think that that fits well. Background, of course, if you are Dark Urge, the only background that you have is Haunted One, which gives you skills in Medicine and Intimidation. Medicine you're not going to use too much, but Intimidation is nice, especially because we are a Barbarian. And then abilities, this is what I'm going to go. I will say the only difference here for this is if you do not want to pick up the Hag's Hair for whatever reason, then you can take your strength down a point and they'll give you 2 points to put into like wisdom. I would recommend wisdom because there are a lot of wisdom checks in the game. But if you don't want to do that and you do want to get the Hag's Hair, which I recommend because we want to get our strength up to 20, then you can go ahead and just leave wisdom at 8 and put strength up to 17. We're going to have 14 points in dex, so that way we have a little bit better initiative as well as a little bit more armor for our armor class. And then constitution is going to be high, 1, because we want to be tanky and we're going to be in the front lines, and 2, because when it comes to the Barbarian, you do get this feature when you are not wearing armor, you're going to add your constitution modifier to your armor class. So that is going to be really nice as well for just making us even harder to hit and even tankier. And then I like to put my last 2 remaining points in charisma. And the reason why I do that is because when it comes to playing Barbarian, there is a lot of really unique dialogue options to a Barbarian as well as the Dark Urge. So not having a negative in charisma allows you to go ahead and enjoy those experiences and not get screwed over by not really exactly being a face of your party, but still get to have those unique experiences. And again, because we do have that proficiency in intimidation, a lot of the times the Barbarian unique dialogue is going to be intimidation, so you don't want to have a negative there. But this is going to be the main stat spread with this build. We are only going to get 2 feats, so again, I do really recommend getting the Hag's Hair, so that way we can bump our strength up to 19 and then 20 with that Hag's Hair. And then we're also going to go Great Weapon Master for this build. All right, so moving on to level 2. Level 2 is really simple. This is where you are going to get Danger Sense, which is going to give you advantage on dexterity saving throws against trap spells and surfaces, which is nice for exploration. But the main thing that you are going to get here is Reckless Attack. And what this allows you to do is until your next turn, you have advantage on attack rolls, but enemies also have advantage against you. So that's kind of the downside, but we are going to have a pretty decent armor class with this build, so you don't have to worry too much. And you're the Dark Urge. You don't care about enemies attacking you because you are just trying to murder literally everything that comes your way. Moving on to level 3, we are of course going to get our Barbarian subclass, and this is where we are going to go Berserker. Now I will say that Wild Heart is really good, and I know Wild Heart is kind of like a fan favorite, but I believe that the Berserker and going into Frenzy is more thematic, and for this build specifically, we are going to want to have the access to Enrage Throw and then the Frenzied Strike, which is going to give us another attack, which is super huge when you are trying to crit fish. Now, what Frenzy does is it replaces your rage. So your rage turns into a frenzy. You're going to get Frenzy Strike and a Rage Throw, the abilities I just talked about, and you can also make an improvised weapon attack as a bonus action, which is really, really nice, and I think it's a ton of fun for this build and pretty thematic for you just to be able to pick someone up and just throw it at another person for an insane amount of damage. And again, like I said, it's a lot of fun and it's absolutely hilarious. So that is why we are going Berserker. Moving on to level 4, we are going to get our first feat, and that's all we're going to get. So what I recommend you do is you go Great Weapon Master, and there is a couple different reasons why. Not only is Great Weapon Master one of the strongest feats in the game, but the first part of Great Weapon Master is actually more useful in this build than it normally is. And the reason why is because when you land a critical hit or kill a target with a melee weapon, you can make another melee weapon attack as a bonus action that turn. And that's really good because with the Berserker specifically, that extra bonus attack that you normally get does give you a debuff on yourself, and I'll put it up on the screen so that way you can see exactly what happens with the debuff. So this allows us to make a bonus action attack without applying that debuff to ourselves, which is super, super nice. And again, we're going to proc this a lot because we are going to be landing a lot of critical hits. Now, of course, if you don't know Great Weapon Master, it gives you a +10 bonus to damage rolls you make with heavy melee weapons. So it's just going to be a flat 10 damage that is going to be added onto your melee weapon damage, which is super huge. And especially when you are doing crits, that extra 10 damage really, really stacks up because of the crit, that's going to be 20 damage. So it's absolutely insane. And then, of course, the downside to having such a strong feat is you are going to take a -5 penalty to attack rolls you make with heavy melee weapons. We are going to get our strength up to 5. So these are basically going to cancel each other out because we're going to have a +5 to hit, but then we're going to have a -5 penalty. So it's going to cancel each other out. And then when you get weapons that have weapon enchantments on them for like +1, +2, then you're going to start getting a bonus. So it shouldn't be too hard to hit people. But if you do have an enemy that has really high AC, like always, I do recommend that you toggle this passive off to hit that target as well. All right, moving on to level 5. Level 5 is simple as with most martial classes, but it is really nice. So you are going to get fast movement, and what this does is increases your movement speed by 10 while not wearing heavy armor, which is nice because we are going to want to be able to maneuver around the battlefield and chop everything in half as this Berserker Dark Urge. And then the main feature here is extra attack. And extra attack, of course, is huge because we just get to make 2 attacks per round, and with this build we're going to be able to make 3 attacks per round because of our Berserker subclass, or with our Great Weapon Master landing a critical hit. Moving on to level 6, this is where we are going to start picking up our levels in Fighter. So we're going to go Fighter, and level 1 fighters get Second Wind, which is going to be a bonus action that gives you a little bit of healing, which is really nice. And then for the fighting style, there are 2 options that you can go. You can either go defense to get a +1 bonus to your armor class to make yourself a little bit tankier, but we're the Dark Urge. Again, we do not care about tankiness, we care about murdering everything. So we are going to go Great Weapon Fighting, and what this does is when you roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die for an attack with a 2-handed melee weapon, that die is re-rolled once. So when you are crit fishing, this is really nice because what this does is make sure that if you do low roll on that attack, then you're going to re-roll it, and hopefully you hit a higher number, so that way you can ink out even more damage. So that is why I'm going to pick Great Weapon Fighting. But again, if you want to be a little bit more defensive, then you can take defense for your fighting style as well. All right, so moving on to level 7, we're going to be a fighter level 2, which is going to give us action surge. And so this is going to allow us to make 5 attacks in 1 round of combat, which is super nice because normally we're only going to be able to make 3. But when you're making 5 attacks, especially if you're doing it on like a boss or something, you're almost guaranteed to at least get 1 critical strike in there, so you are going to do an absolutely insane amount of damage. And everyone knows Action Surge is one of the best class actions in the game. Moving on to level 3, we are going to pick up our final level in Fighter, and this is where we are going to get our champion subclass. Now, I will shout out Battle Master is really, really good. And everyone kind of knows Battle Master's insane, and maneuvers are really nice. And if you want to go Battle Master for those maneuvers, you absolutely can. But I'm going Champion, and the only reason why I'm going Champion is because we get improved critical hit. And what this does is the number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 1. And this effect can stack. There is a lot of equipment in the game that has this ability too. So you can get that number you need to roll a critical hit really, really low, which means you are going to be critting all the time, which is why I choose the Champion subclass. But if you want to do if you want to bring a little bit more utility to your Dark Urge character, then you can go Battle Master and then pick whatever maneuvers you want. However, because I want to focus on crits with this build, we are going to go Champion. All right, so moving on to level 9, this is where you have a couple different options. Now, if you want to put another final level in Fighter, you can, and the reason why is because you'll get a feat. So you can go 8 and 4, and that'll give you 3 feats with this build, which of course is going to be nice because that means that you're going to be able to pick like maybe Tavern Brawler if you want, or Alert as your like final feat for this build. However, what I prefer to do is I actually like to just put the rest of my levels in Barbarian, and the reason why is because we want that improved critical from Barbarian, which you get at Barbarian level 9. So you do give up a feat for that, but because again we are a critical build, we want to have that improved critical, of course. So we are going to put our next level in Barbarian, and this is going to give you an additional rage charge, which again is super nice because this means that you're going to be able to just keep going hard longer before you need to rest and get that rage back. And then you are also going to get mindless rage, and this hasn't came up too much, but it is nice to have. So when you're raging, you can't be charmed or frightened, and calm emotions no longer ends your rage. So it's a nice little bonus, but it's not too huge, and you probably won't see it come into play too much. Now, moving on to level 10, we are going to get Feral Instinct, and this is actually a really nice ability because what this does is it's going to give you a +3 bonus to your initiative, and you can't be surprised, which is nice because there are a lot of instances in the game where it does try to surprise you, and surprise rounds suck for you. If you've ever been surprised, then you know how hard you can get dominated by surprise rounds, especially on Tactician difficulty, which is all my builds are built on Tactician difficulty. So this is nice because you'll be the only one in the party that's like, no, and then you just go and murder everyone anyway. And then of course we want to have high initiative because we want to be able to go as soon as possible in combat to just start murdering and one-shotting everyone. So that ability is super simple, but it is really nice. Moving on to level 11, this is where we are going to get a feat, and this is where you are going to bump that strength up to 19, and because you got the Hag's Hair, it should be 20 at this point. And when you do, I don't have the Hag's Hair on this because the downside to the Hag's Hair is if you do respec your character, you lose that permanent +1. So just like be wary of that, is if you do go get the Hag's Hair, make sure that when you do use it, it is going to be when you know you're not going to respect your character, because you will lose out on that Hag's Hair bonus. So with this, you're going to have a +5 with the Hag's Hair, and you're going to have strength up to 20, which is again super nice, and that is why you should take an ability score improvement here. There's a couple feats that you can take, but it's not going to be as good as maxing out your strength. And then level 12, the final level, this is where we're going to get what I was talking about earlier, which is brutal critical. And what this does is when you land a critical hit, you roll an extra damage die as well as the normal additional critical dice, which is this makes it so much damage. Like the final way to top off this build and really scale into the late game, this is how you do it, and this is going to make it so when you do land a critical hit on someone, especially with all of our other critical hit based things, you are going to decimate that target. Most enemies are going to get one shot if you land a critical hit on them with this build, and in terms of bosses, you can easily half health them, if not more, because of this. So that's why I like going Barbarian up to level 9 instead of getting another feat, because of the fact that like this brutal critical is so strong and really helps this build just output as much damage as possible. But if you don't want that and you do want another feat, then you can go with another point into Fighter and get that final point as well. But that is a level guide from levels 1 to 12. So let's move on to the equipment section. All right, so moving on to the equipment section, like I said before, there are a lot of pieces of equipment that do synergize well with critical strike. So that is what I'm going to be focusing on and showing on the screen right over here. However, there are a couple other good pieces of equipment, and if you do want a full comprehensive list of all the equipment that I do recommend for this build, then make sure to check the description box down below. All right, so for the build recap, I love this build because sometimes you don't want to be a spellcaster, sometimes you don't want to use your brain, you just want to turn it off and you want to just go hit everything with the biggest weapon that you can find and do an insane amount of damage while doing it. So I really like about this build is the fact that we really do get to play thematically as this Dark Urge. You can be as evil or try to resist the Dark Urge as much as possible. The choice is really up to you, but Dark Urge is a lot of fun to play because of the fact that there's so many unique options when it comes to what the Dark Urge brings to the table. There's so many unique interactions. There's a unique storyline that goes along with it. So it's a lot of fun to play. And on top of that, being this barbarian that has this frenzied rage in them really fits that theme of giving into your Dark Urge and just going absolutely crazy and being the super proficient killer. So we have those critical strikes, and that's kind of like the focus of it. It's a lot of fun, and of course this build I think is incredibly powerful because of the fact that when you do land your critical strikes, you are going to output an absurd amount of damage. I mean, you've seen some of these clips, like the damage that you can output on enemies is absolutely insane. So I really like this build. Feel free to mix and match however you see fit. If you don't want to follow this 100%, or if you want to try something different, let me know down below how you would build your Dark Urge character, or if you have been playing a Dark Urge, then let me know how you took it if you were trying to do a more thematic build. But thank you so much for watching this video. That is all the time I have for you today. If you like this video, then once again, make sure to leave a like on the video, as well as hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so that way you are notified whenever I do upload another Baldur's Gate 3 build video. I do upload them every Friday, so make sure to come back next Friday for the next build. There will be a link to a poll down below where you can vote on the next build. But that is all the time I have for you today, so I will see you in the next one.